Hi, good evening, and welcome to the first Jon Gaunt live show at 7 o'clock. They're going to be at 7 every day now, Monday to Thursday. What are we talking about tonight? Well, this is something that's going to get you going. Starmer, Welby, and Prevent. Too little, too late. How can I combine those three people together? Simple. All three are guilty of not protecting the public. And in this broadcast, I'll show you why. And it's a disgrace because what it actually illustrates, in my opinion, is that the establishment do not care about you and your kids. It's an absolute outrage. When you actually go through it step by step, you'll see what I mean. Starmer, obviously, today, he's got all these people, he loves it, doesn't he? He's got all these people together from different countries to discuss the people who are trying to get people in, well, not trying, they're succeeding, the little boat invasion. And he's calling them terrorists. So he's got 40 people over. I was going to say heads of state. They're not. Even he couldn't be bothered to stay all day. But then he did a press conference. And did you see it? He said basically, I get it. He put it out on a video, on a tweet. He certainly doesn't get Twitter, that's for sure, or X. But he put out a tweet or an X today basically saying, I get it. I now understand why you're so mad. Pity you didn't think about that before it was costing us £5.5 million a day to put up migrants in hotels. He only mentioned the word hotel once and only in passing. Basically, he wanted to strut his stuff on the world stage again. He makes me sick. Why isn't he bothering to focus in on the real problems we've got and the real concerns? Because he said, yes, and it makes me mad too. Well, I've just said it in a more animated way. I could never imagine Keir Starmer getting mad. I couldn't even imagine him having a laugh or a beer. The man is an automaton. He's the worst leader we've had in ages. Well, apart from Liz Truss, but she wasn't in long enough to really consider. By the way, you can still comment on the side if you want to have your say tonight. So he's the first one. Starmer. He suddenly realised and recognised the chaos that's being caused by the small boat invasions. He still wants to deal with it, though, by working with the rest of Europe, which to a certain extent he's right. However, the first and immediate thing to do, like I said a few days ago, is to say, from today, no more hotels. You will be put up in old army camps and in army tents. That's the way it's going to be, because then that would deter other people coming. Then we've got to get on and deal with the people who've already got into the country, not just by Keir Starmer, but also by the failure of Rishi and the Conservatives. But the British public are fed up to the back teeth, and you might think that you're mad now, Sir Keir. Wait till the British public really get mad, because that's coming down the line. So why did I want to tie him in with Prevent? Well, Prevent and the whole case of the Southport killer, effectively, they had three opportunities to close him down. One was when he was 13 years old. He should have been locked up in a secure mental institution and given whatever help he needs. I don't care where they put him, but he should have been taken off the streets at that point. And I went through this with you the other day, when you go through the reasons for why he wasn't, one of the reasons they missed him was because they spelt his name incorrectly, or that's the excuse they're giving, which is nonsense, because you've got software, I've got software. You spell something wrong, it'll auto-correct once you've put them in a few times. And surely their systems are a bit more sophisticated than our Amstrads at home. What do you reckon? So Axel Rudakabana could have been stopped. He, however, was allowed 3 times, 3 reviews by this organisation called Prevent, which should be called Do Not Prevent, of course, and they let him out. Now, that's a failure, a systemic failure of the organisation, and as a result of it, the boss, I was telling you the other day, has now fallen on his sword. He's left. But you know, and I know, he'll get another job in the public sector, because that's how it works in Britain. They never really get the boot. they still get another chummy little job along the line. Or he'll end up being an expert on domestic terror because he's the man who cocked up, or his department cocked up, when he was in charge. But you see, that's the problem. Even I there censored myself. No one takes responsibility. No one. It's like Keir Starmer. Oh, I'm mad. I get it. Well, where's the apology then, Sir Keir? You could then say, I was wrong. And then this is another reason why I tie it in to the Axel Rudakabana case, because it was Starmer who, by the admission of his own terrorist czar and John Carlyle, the top guys when it comes to terrorism, have both said, him not saying, you know, when the riots were beginning to kick off, if he had said straight away, we've got a man in custody, which they had, it was a boy, he could have said, and he's not a refugee, he hasn't just arrived in the country, it would not have damaged the case. Because if that, we went through this before, if that was the case, and there was a chance that it could compromise a jury, but there wasn't a jury in the end, there was just the judge, of course, because he admitted it, Axel Rudakabana, he admitted killing those 3 little girls. Starmer could have put the cap on this straight away. Instead, what happened, and I think he did it for reasons, political reasons, it kicked off. I'm not justifying or condoning the people who wanted to burn the hotels down, but other people who then wrote things on Facebook, did they really deserve to go to prison? And even if they did they deserve to go for 2.5, 3.5 years? Did they get a fair trial? Did they hellers like? Because the duty solicitor would have said, look, if you cough for this straight away, you will get 1/3 off your sentence. Many of these people had never, ever been in trouble with the police before. They got carried away. They wrote things they shouldn't have done. That woman who wrote it and then took it off Facebook almost immediately. What about the guy who died in prison? Starmer has not apologized. And he could. And I think it would make him a better leader if he said, well, actually, I could have told you before, but I didn't. And this is the reason. Or if he had explained at the beginning, maybe when he ran to Southport and then ran back to his car after putting the bouquet down, because those people were not out-of-town yobbos. They were ordinary Southport residents who were very annoyed that this, annoyed, an understatement of the year, that this slaughter had happened in their backyard at a dance studio. Those 3 little girls and 10 others who had just gone to do a dance class with Taylor Swift music. It could have been any of our kids, our grandkids. It's horrendous. But he acted like an automaton. He acted like a robot. And then Yvette Cooper, who's turning into mini-me Starmer, she was with him today at this thing about how do we stop the small boats. She's useless, so she just mimics him. So he played Billy Big Boots, and as a result, I think the riots were greater. I'm not saying it was all his fault. Listen to what I'm saying. And it's created this real division. He is the most hated prime minister ever. His poll ratings are dreadful. So now when he wants our help, how can he pull us on? And, of course, don't forget, he condemned everybody who complained or was on the streets as far-right, racist, fascists. Well, he was wrong. They weren't. He also said they'd come in and bust themselves in or trained in from other areas. They hadn't. Most of the convictions for any of the rioting that happened subsequently, it wasn't a team of far-right people going around the country causing the trouble, which often happens with your lefties, your Antifa mob. Yeah, this was ordinary local people. Ordinary local people who were basically saying, Sir Keir, we've had enough of this. They got it wrong about Axel. Of course they did. But you could have nipped it in the bud. And people are angry. They're angry about the hotels, Sir Keir. You didn't even mention the hotels today. It isn't just the boat arrivals that people are angry about. It's the fact then that these people are being put into hotels. Hotels are often the very fabric or the cornerstone of local communities where they have their weddings, their 18ths, etc., etc. So people are getting put out. Then they learn that we're spending £5.5 million a day to put these people up. And then they're looking at homeless people shouting and screaming on the streets, ex-veterans, and they haven't got anywhere to live. Do you not see, Sir Keir, you robot, that this is winding people up? And you can stand there in your little press conference and you can go on Twitter and say, it makes me mad too, but you can't even get animated about it, can you? Right? I didn't believe you've been made mad about the migrant invasion. And also, I seem to recall in opposition, and ever since you've been in politics, and before that, of course, you were director of public prosecutions. Were you anti it then? Or did you basically, at your Islington drinks party, condemn us all as racists? I mean, I've been on the radio and in the media for long enough to know you only had to mention the migrants and people thought you were racist. We weren't being racist. We're not being racist now. We just want fair play. Most people who are very angry about the migrants, they're not anti-immigration. Like myself, I'm not anti-immigration. We're anti the fact that you, the politicians, the establishment class, whether you're conservatives or Liberal Democrats or Labour, you've all taken the eye off the ball. You didn't care. You literally didn't care. And you thought you could keep writing us off as far-right racists. Well, now it's come home to roost. And this is why I'm saying it's an establishment problem. Then we go on to, you might think, well, why in that picture, Gaunty? I can see why you got Ruda Cabana now, why you've got him there. But why have you also got the Archbishop of Canterbury? Well, I'll tell you, the Archbishop of Canterbury, he was interviewed by Laura Kuenssberg on Sunday. He was treated as if he was some super prime minister. And I watched it today, the interview, because I have been getting fed up of, like, even the royal family have said, Happy Eid. What's all this about? The only religion in this country, the religion of the country, right, is the Christian religion. Now, I'm not religious anymore. So if you want to celebrate Christmas, on you go. Likewise, if you want to celebrate Ramadan or Eid or any of the Sikh festival, Diwali, whatever, fine. But I don't know why it's been turned into a national event. Like today, the BBC had a Ramadan program on, or an Eid program at 10:30. How is that of interest to the majority of people in this country? Answer, it's not. And when Christianity has been relegated, right, to the backwaters, which it has been, and as I say, I was brought up a Christian. I went to Bluecoat. I went to a Church of England school. I'm not religious anymore. I think all religions are just a form of oppression to keep us in our place. This whole idea, whether it's, when you go to heaven, it'll be better, and you have all this dosh, or you're going to get 75 virgins or whatever, whichever religion it is, they all play the same trick. Put up with the SH1T now because it's going to be better later. It's a tool of oppression, religion. So I'm against it, really. But I respect people's beliefs. If you want to be religious and believe in a load of gobbledygook, on you go. I haven't got a problem with it. But I do object to it being forced down my throat. So in light of that, I watched the interview with this idiot. And he got so much respect off Laura Kuenssberg. It was unbelievable. It was the softest interview ever. So then you might say, why are you upset, Gaunty? Well, let me remind you. We talked about this a few weeks ago. And this is where I like doing these kinds of shows, because all these things come together. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, he's no longer, he had to resign. But he didn't act very swiftly, did he, with John Smyth? He was a paedophile, not just a paedophile, a prolific paedophile. Over 100 boys he raped or sexually assaulted in his sordid career. In 2013, Welby was aware of this man and what he'd been up to. And he's got some cock and bull story that, I thought somebody else told the police. You're the effing Archbishop. The book, or the Bible, must stop with you, mustn't it? But that's been his excuse, and he's managed to cling on for a time. Now then, other paedophile protectors have come out of the woodwork in the Church of England, so eventually he had to resign. But when he resigned, again, did he apologise? No. He took the mickey. In his last speech in the House of Lords, which, by the way, no bishops should be in the House of Lords. We should get rid of them completely. What have they got to do with lawmaking? Makes me sick. If you disagree, by the way, I'm willing to argue with you about this. But Welby had to resign. So he resigned. And I would say, basically in disgrace. And his answer to why he didn't really do anything about Smyth, he said, I was overwhelmed by how much child abuse there was in the Church of England. You were overwhelmed. What about the 10-year-old choir boys who people like Smyth were buggering? Do you think they were overwhelmed or were they underwhelmed? You privileged prat. You make me sick. And then he said this, and you can look it up and see whether I'm telling the truth or not. He said he's forgiven. He's forgiven John, the pervert. He's forgiven him. Who does he think he is? Lord Jesus Christ? Is he God? No. But he's forgiven John Smyth because he says that's important. Although it's important also to remember that he's got previous for this, Welby. Previous when he supported Prince Andrew. He thought everyone was being nasty when Prince Andrew was being accused of being a pedo. So he's got the Midas touch in reverse. A bit like Sir Keir. Everything he touches doesn't turn to gold, it turns to you-know-what. But these guys are in positions of power. We're meant to tug our forelock. We're meant to sit there and listen to the Archbishop. And like I say, Laura Kunsberg, and I'm not really picking on her, so let's not have a bash at her, but she gave him the softest of interviews. Why? I'd even go so far as to say he shouldn't have been interviewed at all. What's the point? He's a nobody. I hope now he disappears into obscurity. I hope they get someone better to lead their church, somebody with a backbone, somebody with some balls. Maybe one of those female clerics is the answer. But this is just the facts that Starmer, Welby, and Prevent, they all act too little, too late. And then they suddenly say, oh, we understand the frustration. But they don't. And then classically today, Starmer's found time to invite young kids into number 10 Downing Street to talk about the new Netflix drama Adolescence, which I haven't seen yet. I've heard great reports about it, but I've also read the controversies about it as well. I'll probably watch the first one tonight. On the iPlayer, not iPlayer, it's on Netflix, isn't it? So I'll probably watch it tonight because I'm down at my daughter's, as you can see. However, inviting people in or inviting Netflix to put that film in every school, it's kind of populism, nonsense. And he criticises Farage for populism, but it's another example of how he just isn't in touch with the public. I don't know whether I've told you this story. When I first started working on The Sun, I found it incredible. When I wrote a column, I think they thought I was Little John or something at first, because I took over from him. I write a column, and then next week they'd be discussing it as policy. Not my column, but whatever I said. They were petrified in those days of the newspapers. Well, of The Sun. That's all I can tell you. And did I tell you about I went to Rupert Murdoch's party? I went twice, actually, but one of them was in the Oxo Tower, which is a posh restaurant in on the River Thames. And I went with the editor at the time, a guy called Dominic Mohan. We got out of the Uber and we walked in and got the lift up to the top floor where this party was. I basically fell out of the lift. I don't know why. I was unsteady on my feet. I thought we'd only had one drink beforehand. But I bumped into Gordon Brown. I think he was the Prime Minister at the time. Well, no, sorry. And then I realised who he was. And then I looked up and I looked around the room. And you know when people say to you, there's 200 people who run the country? I've always thought that's BS. But it's the truth. In that room, what captains of industry, editors of other newspapers, all the top politicians, and all the leaders, particularly, of each party. And right in the centre was Rupert Murdoch talking to them. Now, I've always said, and you know what's going to come next, The relationship between a newspaper or a journalist and a politician should be one of a dog and a lamppost. We shouldn't be cozying up with them, which is what the BBC. Oh, that was stuff full of BBC people as well. But we shouldn't be cozying up to them. But that's what happens. So they have a narrative of the world and what they think the world is like, which is like nothing, resembles nothing that we live in. That's why this cost of living crisis, which is going to go bonkers tomorrow, because don't forget, your electricity is going up, your gas is going up, council tax is going up. Did you see that tonight? They've put emergency powers into Birmingham because they've got rats the size of cats, and now they've got illness coming from it, they think. So you're going to have to pay more council tax, but get less service, right? Because all the councils are going bankrupt. This isn't necessarily Keir's fault. This is a build-up of the establishment's fault. Even your Sky's going to go up, your broadband's going to go up. All of these things are going to go. Plus, national insurance is going to come in. Now, they made a big thing about they haven't increased the national insurance to you as an individual, but they have to firms. And what this means is less people will get employed, or they won't get the right rate for the job. This is what's going to hit you tomorrow. Well, about April the 5th, to be absolutely honest. But it's going to hit. And if you think money's too tight to mention, thank you, Mick, now imagine what it's going to be like soon. But do these people understand? Chris Evans used to do this great thing on his breakfast show where he'd ask people, do you know what the price of a loaf of bread is to MPs or a bottle of milk? And they would never know, right? Well, I reckon if you played that game now, it would be the same. I don't think they understand how tight it is for ordinary people. And I'm going to confess something. When I was working on The Sun and on TalkSport, I was earning a fortune. So gradually, even me, you get immune to it. I'm not proud of how I was during that period. In fact, I'm a little bit ashamed of it. But you get insulated from it. Because when you're getting cars picking you up, taking you to the Oxo Tower, and you suddenly think, oh, Dad, you know, you've always said there's 200 people run the country. Well, there are. And you know what? I'm number 201, which I wasn't. But do you follow what I'm saying? It's that kind of pressure on you. It's not pressure, but you. And that's what happens. So I think you'd begin to become one of them. I'll stop there and I'll come to your comments and then I'll come back. But this is what I wanted to talk about. Starmer, Welby, and Prevent all are examples of the establishment doing too little, too late. And we always know they say, we'll have an inquiry and it will never happen again. I could have put the sexual abuse of young white girls within that title. I could have picked on the post office people to put into that title. It's always the establishment, them who have everything, who basically act too late. They think, just going back to the Sun for a moment, when we organised a thing because they were putting paedophiles on white council estates, working class estates, BBC Newsnight came down to film it. It was it Sarah's Law or something like that it was meant to be. It was basically saying, why are you putting all the pedos in one place? All the middle-class knobs on the BBC and in The Guardian were outraged at this. Not at that central premise, but that the women who were protesting in Plymouth or Portsmouth, can't quite remember where it was, they just talked about what they were wearing. They all had white heels. You could hear them clacking down the street. And they brought their children with them. And it was after dark. It was 10 o'clock. Kind of missing the point, really. They brought the children with them in case some filthy paedophile abused them. But they wanted to attack the working people. It's the same with the riots this summer. They talk about the white working class, the chavs. We can be attacked all the time. It's the same with adolescents. Some people are saying that adolescents, the TV program is about a white kid, should be about a black kid. I haven't seen it, so I can't pass comment on that yet. But what I'm trying to get at is these people, they own the newspapers, they write the newspapers, they're not so influential now, but they also run all the big organisations. How many times have I told you? And they're always slow off the mark to protect you and yours. Ronnie Hurst, what's this? Plus, they should not be allowed benefits, mobile phones, new shoes or PlayStations, driving lessons, etc. Oh, you're talking about the migrants. Well, I don't think they do get benefits, mate. They get hardly anything. That's one of the problems. But Ronnie, what really should happen is we shouldn't let them in the first place. We should deter them. I said this yesterday. You have to deter them. So you have to say, if you're going to come over, you're going to end up living in a tent because we've just closed all the hotels. We could do that within a week. Get the army on it. You know, when there's a disaster, the army's there putting up the tents on old airfields or whatever. We could do that in a week and get them all in there. I'm not talking about treating them inhumanely. I'm still talking about there being medical care and all the rest of it. But you've got to then send videos of that back to the beaches of Calais, so or wherever they come from, because on their trip they've all got their mobies, so they can all look on the mobile and think, "Oh, England's off. Then can't go there anymore because they're being rough with us." So that will deter people coming. That's number one. Number two, so they're going into tents. Number two, the people who are here, let's get them processed smart, really quick. There's loads of human rights lawyers or graduate trainees. I told you about this before. We could do that very quickly. Then deport them if they've got no right to be here. But if they've got a skill that we need, keep them. Let's not be silly. Don't cut off our noses to spite our face. And then make sure that our well-managed, controlled immigration process is working so we're getting the people we want in the future coming into the country. Then that would stop you, Ronnie, getting so wound up saying they've got benefits, mobile phones, new shoes, PlayStations, driving lessons. Do you understand where I'm coming from? I'm not having a go at you, Ronnie. I'm just saying they're playing you. They want the bogeyman. They want you to think that all your problems are because of them. And this is where the hypocrisy of your Starmers, of your Welbys, all comes into play. And the bloke who ran Prevent, he probably knew it wasn't going to be his kids who were going to get slaughtered in a dance class because they don't go to those kinds of things. Tell me if I'm wrong. Evening, John, says Steve on YouTube. It's time for the backbenchers to revolt against Starmer before things get worse. And it will if he stays. Our great country is in decline and Starmer is to blame. Taxi for Starmer now. Well, I'm not sure I necessarily agree with you. Because, again, the other problem with being a backbencher, they work on you. You go in there, you might have loads of great ideas and great principles, but you'll just get, it's not getting it knocked out of you. It's a bit like freeze thaw. I remember learning about this from Mr. Pritchard, my geography teacher. You know, when a glacier is coming down a mountain, yeah, it gets into the softer rock, puts the water in there, freezes, whatever, and then it cracks. So gradually over a period, it erodes. So that's how you end up with your glacial valleys, and that's how you end up with your tarn. Are they called tarns or something like that? It's weird, isn't it, the things you remember at school? But anyway, he was a brilliant teacher, still alive, brilliant teacher, taught us all about that. But it's a bit like that. So it's a gradual, slow process. It isn't, oh, here you are, there's all your exes, on you go. That said, the new MP in Coventry, I was telling you about her yesterday, she's claimed £900 for her dog. She's got a cockapoo, and she wants the cockapoo to be with her in her second home, which is, I presume, a flat or something in London. So she claimed extra for that. I'm here, as I said yesterday, I said this yesterday, I'm here looking after my daughter's dog. I'm actually really enjoying it, and I'm enjoying the solitude of it. But she's not paying me. I'm doing it because I'm a dad. But this woman, the MP for Coventry, I thought this would be all over the papers today, but they've all backed off. I think the expenses scandal is going to hit again. And it's going to be as big as it was before. Do you remember the twat who had the moat and the duck house or whatever it was? They were all on the fiddle. That's why the story was broken, not by a lobby correspondent, somebody who works in Parliament, but outside of it. It's a bit like football. When I was on the Sun, if one of the football lads had a great story on a Chelsea player, because we have people in each of those big clubs, Chelsea, Man United, whatever, they wouldn't write. The football correspondent for the club would not write the story. He'd pass it on to another journalist to protect him. It's all, and then no doubt they would probably also warn the player, this is coming down the line. You can't believe a thing you read. It's the way it works. That's how Max Clifford made all his money. Oh, don't run a story on such and such being gay or being this or being that. I'll give you a different story about another band or about another pop star. It's all sick. And, I couldn't believe the stinking hypocrisy when that filthy old pervert died. Couldn't believe it. Jimmy Savile's another case. You see, because there's still all this story about Jimmy Savile and Starmer. Starmer was the director of public prosecutions. Why didn't he get involved earlier in that one? I don't know. Why is the BBC stuff full of paedophiles? And it is. When people say that, if you haven't worked for the BBC, people think, oh, no, that's wrong. That's just cliche. It's not, I'm afraid. It's not. Anyway, where are we? Starmer is the biggest tool his father made. It's an old joke, Ronnie, but thank you. We've got the worst possible government, says Mark Porter on Facebook, at the worst possible time. I've never known a prime minister so disconnected from the majority of the country. That's kind of what I'm saying. It feels like we're being ignored, even despised. That's right. It is. They despise us. But it isn't just Starmer. Look at Ed Miliband. He thinks we're idiots to say, no, I want to still keep driving my car. I can't afford a new one. And I certainly can't afford an electric one where I can't get the lecky to keep it going. Well, you're really wealthy. Why can't you buy a nice flash electric car? Well, I don't want to be in I told you this about my mate. Got an Audi, 80 odd grand. He said, I don't want to be in that, John, worried about whether it's going to run out of power. And I can see his point. He wants to be in a big gas guzzler, doesn't he? Knowing that he can trust it. That's just the real world. And then these people say, oh, get a heat pump instead of having proper central heating. It just isn't going to happen at the moment. We all want to save the planet, but we can't all do what you want, Ed Miliband, because you've got two houses. And, of course, stinking hypocrites like you get your fuel bills paid anyway. Like that Liz, whatever her name is. It's like going back to the MP, whose name I can't pronounce, in Coventry, who's got the dog and claimed the £900 worth of expenses. She's also one of the MPs who's helping Starmer and Angela Rayner to cut disability benefits for people. The stinking, filthy hypocrite. Pigs, snouts, trough. Anyway, the Barren Flights. People with skills don't arrive on boats, or is it me? You're wrong. You're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. There will be people on there with real skills, but are just getting away from the country. Maybe because they're fleeing persecution. Maybe because they want a better life. Always remember, my dad went to Cuba and he said, oh, he had a great waiter. He said, he's the doctor. I said, what? And it was like a cliche. It was a bit like the Polish plumber. I've never been to Cuba, but I want to. But loads of people who have been there said, oh, yeah, he's a doctor. He's a brain surgeon, but they can't get any work. So I think you'll be careful there, Barren Flights. I don't think they're all thick. And in fact, a lot of immigrants are very intelligent. I mean, for one, they can speak normally more than just the language they were brought up with. Not many of us can do that, myself included. I'm just trying to be fair here. I'm saying don't blame the immigrants. Blame the prats in charge. We could have sorted out the immigrant problem. We could have sorted out the small boats ages ago. I said 2 days ago, the piece of coast isn't that long. Deter them first. Show them pictures of where they're going to be lying, where they're going to be sleeping. Show them that, and I bet you the numbers will go down. And if you don't believe me, look at Australia or look what's happened on the Mexico border, or the South America border with Donald Trump. Because he just isn't having it. And that's what we should say. And we should be like Trump. I don't care if that's in contravention of the European whatever. Up yours. We're not doing it anymore. We've had too many. It's ruining our society. We can't afford it. Plead poverty. Like, the coalition of the unwilling, or the coalition of the useless, as I call it. He still hasn't told us how many are in it. Because they don't want to send their kids to die in Ukraine. So far, it's us. It's us. It's us. Oh, and the French. Fat lot of good they'd be, eh? There we are. But Macron won't be in power soon, although he might be after today's news. Because in France, they've gone one step further than us. They've now decided to start locking up anybody who's got a chance of getting a vote. I'm not a big fan of Marine Le Pen, but there's no way she should be going to jail. She's been sent to jail for a similar kind of accusation that was levelled against Farage about using money for different purposes in the European Union. They always do this to keep the smaller parties down. It's part of the establishment thing again. But let's focus on what I'm trying to say. Why do they act so slowly? Jonathan Wilkinson says, you missed out the water. Industry CEOs, countries falling apart, no accountability at the top, goes way back, even as far as Fred the Shred. Oh, yeah, remember him? Bank of Scotland, wasn't it? Nat West. And others. Great show. Thank you for it, says Jonathan Wilkinson. Well, thank you for taking the time to say it. And you made a great point. It does go that far back. Fred the Shred just looked after himself. We bailed the bank out, and then he ripped us all off. That's what happens. Did he go to prison? Do they ever go to prison? Do they go to prison? Sometimes, but not for very long. And then they get a nice job. Steve McNeese, I just wonder at what point they'll say our country's full up. Well, they won't, will they? Our country's not full up because there's loads of landmass, but no one wants to live in those areas. If you don't believe me, go to Scotland. 5 million people live between Glasgow and Edinburgh, but then go a bit further up, no one lives there, right? But that's a false equivalence, isn't it? You can't really talk about that, really. And again, no, Steve, you're falling into the trap. You're starting to think it's the immigrants' fault. It's not. I keep telling you, it's not. It's the establishment. They like this situation. They like it. Otherwise, they'd deal with it. Like today, they're dealing with this idea that now we're going to stop all the delivery drivers. We're going to get them all, we're going to get big business to check that they've got an NI number, even if they're self-employed, because that's the loophole. That won't work. They won't have enough people to do it, to do the jobs. Well, they would if they employed some of the illegals to do it, maybe. I don't know. It's just gone too far. They've held back for too long. They wanted to call us racists for too long. Do you not see who the bloody enemy is? And it's not tribalism. It's not, oh, the enemy's the Conservatives, the enemy's Labour. No, it's all the knobs who've got everything. That's who the enemy is. Seaside Mark, I agree, John. Immigrants in this country live off very little. It's not an easy life being an illegal immigrant in this country unless they work illegally. It's a myth that they have a life of Riley. That's on YouTube. You're right, Seasider, but we need them new arrivals to understand that they're not having a fantastic life. But we don't get that by just turning against them, do we? Do you follow how this all joins up in my head? Thanks. Nigel Gordon, John, they claim expenses for Mars bars. Do they eat our babies as well? I mean, just check for me, Nigel. What do you mean expenses for Mars bars? Give me the evidence of that, because that could be a good story. The Baron Flights, tell that to a homeless person. Tell what? Tell what? Oh, you were on earlier, so it must be a comment you made earlier. What did you say? People with skills don't arrive on boats, or is it me? That's what you said. So is that what you're talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. You can't just make a line but not actually explain what you're trying to say. You're not a government minister. You're not the Prime Minister. Daz Wellings, evening, John. Starmer rolled his sleeves up again today, but to do jack all. Yeah, I nearly guffawed when he said it's about rolling our sleeves. It's not about what Labour did. 14 years of schemes that never worked. He talked about Rwanda, didn't he? That they'd only sent about 300 people back by now. Well, I think he's right. I think Rwanda was a nonsense. I think the concept was right, but it was too far away. However, he made out that he sent 25,000 people back. But most of them wanted to go back. I was watching GB News and that Michelle Dewberry was on this morning. And she basically said to the guy, yeah, but they all wanted to go back. You can't really count them, can you? Which I thought was a really good point. He was replying to me, John, says Seasider Mark. Oh, I understand. So Nigel, not Nigel, it was the Baron Flights. He says, tell that to a homeless person. It's not an easy life being an illegal immigrant in this country unless they work illegally. It's a myth they have the life of Riley, which is what you said. That's true. But it's the same for homeless people. But you see, I would put the tents up, put the people in there. The homeless people would get the hotels. And they would get the help to get accommodation. That's people who have been born and brought up in this country, yeah, or are in the country already. It's a disgrace. 5th largest economy in the world, and we've got people on the street. It's a double disgrace when it's our heroes, when it's our ex-armed forces. That's wrong. Of course, they've got to get priority. Of course they have. So maybe we can make up over that, the Baron Flights. But I don't think it's an easy life for them either. But it isn't an easy. This idea that all these illegals are having an easy life is nonsense. And if they are, it's because also there's unscrupulous firms exploiting them and exploiting the rest of us. And you, not you personally, but you, when you order your lukewarm pizza or curry and you have it delivered on one of those motorized bikes, just think it through. Just think it through. You shouldn't do it. And then if you're doing that, think about the companies who are employing them and don't shop with them anymore. Hey, here's an idea. Make your own food. Just an idea. Might make us all healthier. So you see what I'm trying to do here? I'm trying to say that what happens is they act too little too late. And I don't think it's an accident. I don't think Keir Starmer and what he did with the riots was an accident or a mistake. And even if it was, why hasn't he apologised? I don't think Welby was a mistake. He knew what to do. He's an intelligent man. He went to Cambridge and everything, didn't he? Well, he didn't know what to do. I was shocked by the amount of paedophilia. Well, if you're shocked, mate, and you knew in 2013 you start attacking it, and you certainly grass him up to the police, this prolific paedophile, don't you? And then prevent is about as much use as a chocolate fireguard. They've got blood on their hands, prevent, because they had the chance 3 times to lock him up. And they let him out. And then he slaughtered 3 little children. Oh, Baron Flights, you're banging on about the same old shit. You're boring. He says the boat people pay thousands to get in a boat. The homeless don't have that luxury. They don't need to get in a boat, do they? They're already here. But where do you think they get the money from? They probably sell everything. See, you're again attacking the person who's just trying to improve themselves. I'm not a liberal on this. I wouldn't let anybody in. But I'm saying you are being played, Baron Flight. You are being played by the establishment. They want you to have a bogeyman. Don't you see this? Otherwise, they would sort it out. And what they're actually going to do, they're going to give an amnesty probably to everybody who's here so that big business will boom again, and big business will be able to employ these people. And then when we complain, I've told you the story before about the chippy who went on Panorama with me, or one of those big shows, I can't even remember what show it was, and he basically said, I'm being priced out of the market by these East Europeans. Everyone laughed at him, laughed down their snooty nose. That Emily Mateless, I had a right pop at her. I said, have you ever been a chippy? Have you ever worked with your hands? Have you ever been on the tools? No, I did Mandarin at Cambridge. Well, shut your face then, because you're in the wrong. You've asked this guy to come on, this young lad, and talk about his experience. This was 10, 15 years ago. When if you said something like that, well, actually my wages are being deflated by the East Europeans, you were a racist, which of course you weren't. You were just telling them your experience. And now even the Prime Minister gets it. So what I'm trying to do is not talk in tribal terms anymore. I despise Starmer. I absolutely despise him. I think he's useless. I think he's a hypocrite. He's not even a good actor. Don't know why he's been having his tonsils tickled by that vocal coach. Not worked. I despise him. I despise Archbishop Welby. I'd have him in prison. The guy from Prevent, he should be in a court of law. He should be in a dock. Just like the judge who let that foul monster out to murder and abuse Sarah Sharif. He should be in the dock. Just like all the council officials and senior police officers up north in the northern cities who turned a blind eye to the industrial rape of white working class girls. They should be in the dock. But they won't be, because they're protected by the establishment. That's why it's always too little, too late. If you agree with me, fine. If you don't agree with me, fine. That's what it's all about. Just one last comment. Good evening, John. The government and opposition don't care about illegals or crime or knife crime. They think the biggest threat to this country is 13-year-old white boys, adolescents on Netflix. I'm going to watch it tonight, Del. I did think it was pathetic that he called it a round table. Yeah, we had a round table. This is Starmer. We had a round. I can't even do an impression of him because I'm too animated. At a round table, and we let some young people in. Dickhead. You think that's listening to the youth? Yeah, all right, mate. All right, mate. So that's where we've got to. I believe most of this is, I agree with you, Del, really. It's by design, not by accident. But it will never happen again. Anyway, that was the first show. Hope you enjoyed it. Going to do a show every night now, Monday to Thursday, including Thursday. If I feel like an extra one, I'll chuck one in. But if you do enjoy the show, please tell everybody. Please retweet it. Please, tonight, repeat, when you see the video come up later, pass it on, share it to your mates. Let's get people talking. Let's think about these difficult things because I like combining the subjects. I don't like just doing one subject. But anyway, and if you really like it, what about buying me a cup of coffee? I feel like the homeless guy. Do you know how many cups of coffee have been bought this week? And the deadline's tomorrow. Do you know? Big fat zero. Big fat zero. You're going to see Gaunty next week outside a tube station, or probably outside Coventry station. Scooby-Dooby-Doo, big issue. Help us out if you can. Anything from a £5 upwards. Right, I'll see you soon. Look after yourselves. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the show. Good turnout for the first one. Let's see how many we get tomorrow night. All the best. I'll be back at 7 tomorrow. Until then, if you've got kids, give them a kiss, give them a hug. Hey, 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 don't forget to tell them you love them. See ya.